Hi, welcome to the video. So today we're going to talk about all the different aspects of talent, whether it's real, what it actually is as far as what attributes can appear to be talent, how important it is or unimportant it is to your progress or you becoming a great player. So let's go ahead and also mentally, a lot of people, the idea of talent actually has a negative effect on their guitar practice, but how you approach it could also have a positive one, so we're going to get into that too. So first I'm going to define talent. So talent, according to the dictionary, is a natural ability or a natural aptitude for something. So it doesn't mean you're just really good at something. That's the slang term that people use. Anytime someone's good, they say they're talented. That's not necessarily the case though, because they might just have a high skill level. When you learn a skill, it's something that you learn and you practice and you improve and get better with. Doesn't mean you necessarily have natural talent though, but yet it's used in things like America's Got Talent or talent shows and stuff to basically describe anyone who's good at something. But a lot of people who are really good at something and have put in the tens of thousands of hours of practice and sacrificing and possibly even injuries, especially if it's sports, don't necessarily like being described as being talented. They, of course, will be polite if or they should be, and thank you if you say they're talented because it is a compliment by most people. But it kind of downplays all the effort they put into it, and that's why I think you end up with quotes like I'm going to read two by Einstein. So I'm sure people always told him that he was talented, and these were probably things he said to reply to that. So he said, it is not that I'm so smart, but I stay with the question much longer. So if you apply it to guitar, that's basically practice. It's if something's giving you difficulty, you look for, maybe people say it's impossible to do it. You look for a way to do it, and you try different ways to do it, and you work on those and you practice until you find something that succeeds. So basically he's saying that he thinks outside the box, he practices, until he finds a solution, while most people would give up or think it's impossible and not even try. The other quote is, I have no special talents, I'm only passionately curious. So what's that say? Passionately curious, just a fancy way to say he basically wants to learn everything, and he wants to understand the things he learns. And that's really the other foundation of improving on guitar is you have to improve, you have to learn new things or learn how to apply those things. Because if you just memorize like a bunch of scales, but you never actually learn how to apply them to your playing, that really doesn't do any good. It's like memorizing trivia. You're not actually using it in any way. So it doesn't make you a better player unless it just improves your technique by practicing them. Same thing, it could be chords or whatever. So learning new things or learning ways to apply those things, which is usually done through practice, is the other pillar of improving. So you basically have the practice and you have the learning and be able to apply it. And those are really the keys to getting better. Now, where's talent falls? We'll get into that in a second. But that's where kind of the idea of the 10,000 hours to master something comes from, is that they don't talk about talent at all in that. They just say it takes this many hours to master something, whether it's guitar or something else, doesn't really matter. And I did a video on that, I'll link up in the corner, where I get into the details of how it's okay as a generalization, but it really isn't true. For one thing, I like the term master because you definitely will not have mastered guitar at that point. You will be very good at guitar, but you will still can keep learning on. Now, the bad thing about that thought is the quality of your practice is more important than the quantity. So, though you can do 10,000 hours of practice on just playing a bunch of simple songs and never get beyond the intermediate level. You have to constantly challenge yourself to learn more, to improve your technique, to hold yourself to a high standard. And I'll put a video on that too in the corner, which you can find in the description, and about how to constantly improve, because I did one on that. And that's where also having a good teacher sometimes can help that, because they can push you and they can give you new knowledge and they can hold you accountable when you're making mistakes and maybe not noticing that. Now, so having a good teacher can reduce by thousands the number of hours it takes to get to that same level. So, if your average person takes 10,000 hours, a good teacher can maybe knock that down to 7,000. Talent can do the same sort of thing. Some people naturally learn faster than others. I'll get more into details of why that is, and I don't actually consider it talent, but it's called talent. So if someone is able to learn at a quicker rate, that could reduce the number of hours also. But you still need those thousands of hours. So, for example, recently I've been watching some videos of child prodigy players, especially some of the classical ones on violin and piano and things like that. And you'll see these 10-year-old kids playing amazingly difficult stuff. And the first thing people say is, well, that person clearly has a lot of talent then, because how else could they be at that young age that good? But one of the girls I saw recently interviewed, usually the people interviewing them just kind of gush about how great they are and how talented they are. And they never asked questions. They actually asked, how much do you practice a day? And the response was 10 hours a day. So she was 10 years old. She started playing when she was like, I think it was 4. So she'd been playing about 6.5 years. If you think about that 10,000 hours, if you play 10 hours a day for 6.5 years, that's like 23,000 hours. Let's say she didn't do that much in the first year, so let's knock 3,000 hours off and round it down to 20,000. But so at 10 years old, she's already put in 20,000 hours of practice. She didn't necessarily need to have a lot of talent if she put in that amount of time. And then on top of that, she probably had good instructors too. Most of the child prodigies have family members who are professional musicians who help them, and then they also bring in other even higher level musicians to help teach them once they get to a certain level. So let's say she did have a lot of talent, maybe improved at 50% faster between the good teachers and the talent than what your average person would. So let's say she's improving again. 50% is really good. That means, she'd basically have the equivalent of 30,000 hours of practice when she only did 20. But here's where that doesn't really matter. It kind of proves a point of, if you have 30,000 hours of practice or 20,000 equivalent, you're really good either way. And your average person, honestly, is probably not going to be able to tell the difference, because once you get to that level of ability, it's becomes something that a non-musician or even a non-super advanced musician probably can't tell a difference on that. It's just like when you think of bands, a lot of times fans' favorite record by a band or a guitarist comes out in their first 5 records, maybe their first record, second record, when they're in their 20s, and they don't necessarily put out anything that's any better the rest of their life. Does that mean they're not improving any? Not necessarily, but the improvements are so incremental that your average person is not going to be able to tell a difference and won't necessarily make the music more enjoyable. Or they start adding new genres, which maybe the fans like even less because they're bringing in new ideas that change their playing. So once you achieve a very high level, it's good to always keep improving, but that improvement to your average listener might actually not make any difference or might make them like you less. So really it's getting to that point. So it doesn't matter if talent can get you there a little bit faster. Once you're there, there's no real way to tell the difference between someone who's just super highly skilled because they put in those tens of thousands of hours of practice, had good instruction and good habits and all this stuff, and someone who's talented and got there quicker. Now, here's kind of a mindset then that can be negative though for the idea of talent. And I've seen this a lot of times. I've been teaching guitar since '87, martial arts since '95, and a lot of times when I tell people I teach one of those, one of the common responses is, yeah, I used to play guitar, but I wasn't very talented, so I gave up. I've also seen this on social media many times and heard other teachers that I've known say this sort of thing. That's horrible, because you could achieve a very high level, and also you don't even have to enjoy music. You can be an intermediate level player and still do it as a hobby, but even if you want to do it professionally, you can achieve that level just through hard work and learning. So to give up because you actually thought you didn't have the talent is not something anyone should do. And if you are using this excuse because, well, you just were lazy and didn't practice or didn't want to learn, okay, that's fine. But maybe be honest with yourself and that's why you gave up, or maybe you had a bad instructor that didn't help you to advance. And on the flip side of it, I've also seen people, students or people that come into various studios I've taught at, who are talented, or at least they think they're talented. It could go either way. They might be talented or they might just think they are. But it's a negative for them too, because they're not open to advice, and they don't think they need to practice as hard as other people because they think, well, I'm talented. I don't need to put in the number of hours that other people do, or I don't need to take the advice or study more because I'm already talented. So that's the flip side of that. That can be negative. Now, you don't have to have either of those, though. Even if you believe talent is a factor, which honestly, I'm here talking more about, I don't think it's a major factor in when you get good or not. But if you believe it is, then I never thought I had any talent on guitar. I have some attributes that helped me get better. But my mindset was, because I don't have talent, I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to practice hard, and I'm going to be determined to succeed at this. Because without talent, I need to work harder. So whether you actually have talent or not, if you have that mindset, if you don't think you have talent, then work twice as hard, because you will achieve what you want. If you go and learn as much as you can, get good instruction, and practice hard, you're going to get better. The other side of it, if you do think you have talent and want a positive attitude, you should think, I do have a natural talent for this, so I don't want to waste my potential. So I need to work twice as hard as everyone else so I can maximize my potential. So whether you believe you have talent or don't believe you have talent, the positive mindset is work twice as hard. Learn more, learn as much as you can, practice as much as you can, because whether you have talent or not, either way, that's going to help you to succeed. Okay. It reminds me of something I've seen actually multiple times on reading like sports sections and stuff. The athletes or coaches will talk about a player on their team, and they'll say, yeah, he's the most talented guy on the team, but he's also such a good sets a good example and so humble that he's the first person in practice and the last person to leave practice. And I just find that funny. It's like, okay, you're saying he's the most talented, but you're also admitting he works harder than everyone else on the team. Probably has his entire life. So how do you know he has any talent? He just works harder and practices harder and is more determined. And really, if you think you're less talented than this person, are you working less than them? You should be working twice as much if you think this person is more talented and they're working harder than you, and you want to be professional and take this seriously. So now let's get into talk about what talent actually is, in my opinion. I don't believe there's any natural ability. I think people do have the ability sometimes to learn quicker. And I'll get into that in a second. But the definition again was natural ability or natural aptitude for something. Guitar is such a specific skill set. No one, if you give a toddler who's never seen a guitar, they're not going to know how it played. In fact, they'll probably, if you lay on the floor, they're going to hit it like a drum and make noise from it on it. They're not going to pick up and do bar chords and do scale runs and arpeggios or whatever. They're going to, or chord progressions. It's just too alien. It's not the natural thing. You have to learn the shapes. You don't just first time you pick it up play an F chord or play some other chord. So there's no, I don't think, actual natural ability to play it. Where sometimes, in rare occasions, it might appear there's a natural ability. But I've more heard about this in piano, and I've never actually seen a student who could do this, but I've heard stories about students, but again, mostly on piano, where maybe someone can pick up a guitar the first time they play it and actually play some melody or something like that. But what's probably happened in that case is they probably had family members that played guitar. And just like a child learns to speak, you don't have to teach them necessarily. If you read to a child and talking from a child, eventually they'll start imitating and speaking on their own. If you have a family member that spends hours a day playing guitar in front of a small child, and they're watching you and they're listening to you, then suddenly they're handed a guitar. Maybe they do play some melody that they've seen you play 100 times before. Maybe not very well, but maybe they know which frets to put their fingers at, and then maybe they can kind of imitate plucking and combining it together, because you can learn through visualization and through just watching. It's not as effective actually playing, but visualization is a good way to, for even advanced players, to drill concepts into your head. And actually, I'll leave a video on that too, of how you can practice when you don't have your guitar on you. But again, that's kind of the rare case, I would say. Now, more commonly, you'll have people who maybe advance quicker and learn quicker. But that can be easily explained for many different reasons. Obvious reasons would be if they played another instrument previously, or they sung or do other things, they may have developed a good relative pitch and rhythm and finger dexterity, and they might even have developed like perfect pitch. And if you have perfect pitch and can just sing back any note that you hear, then yeah, it'd be pretty easy for you to then trial and error find that same note on guitar and teach yourself some simple melody through your ability to hear the notes and then sing them and then find them on guitar. But even if you had no past experience, most of learning guitar, a lot of it is not just the physical things. Yes, to do something that's very quick takes some physical coordination on and takes a lot of practice. But really, a lot of it's mental. It's built to understand and combine and know what notes are going to sound like, how they combine together, how they harmonize, and build to synchronize everything together. So someone who has a very good memory, for example, and can read through or hear a song off sheet music or hear it a couple times, if they can pick it out by ear and memorize it, is going to have a huge advantage and going to progress quicker than someone who takes 50 times to memorize the song. But here's the thing, it still doesn't matter, because in the long run, if they both get the song down, whether it takes 2 times or 50 times to get the song down, the one person just needs to practice more. And honestly, they'll probably have it down better after running through it 50 times than the person 2, even if the person was able to memorize it that quick. They'll probably understand the nuances better. But even if they don't, in the end, they both can play the song. So it doesn't make you a better guitarist because you learned it quicker. It allows you to possibly go on and learn other things which can make you a better guitarist. But again, it's not a race. If one person takes 10,000 hours to get really good and someone else takes 15,000 to get really good, they're both really good in the end. Other things can cause you to improve quicker. Maybe you just have very good study skills. Maybe you can listen to a teacher say something and you understand it and remember it right away. Maybe you can read in a book and you have very good reading comprehension. You don't have to go back and reread it to understand the book on theory or something. So there's so many possible pieces that can cause you to improve quicker. Maybe you think in very logical mindsets where you can break things down and isolate them and put them in all the different permutations to kind of work through possibilities and trial and error and find what works. Or maybe you think very creatively and you can think outside the box. You make connections between 2 totally unrelated things and still make it work. And these are some of the characteristics that I think in my teaching that I actually do have a good ability of. I think I can think both creatively and logically, but they're not natural abilities. I developed that as I was growing up. The logical probably came from because I started playing chess when I was like preschool age and stuff like that. But in the end, really, like I said, a lot of this doesn't matter. You have a good teacher; they can point you the way, and you put in the time, and you will get better. Let me just see. Yeah, so I think that pretty much sums up the main points. I didn't write all the script or anything, so that I wanted to cover on here. So does talent matter? In the end, I would say no. And don't worry about it. And focus on making yourself better. Everyone's different. Everyone progresses at different levels. You can, I'd say, many of the best players that I've met will tell you right off the bat that they don't have talent. That they just worked really hard and learned as much as they could and eventually got good. And that's what it comes down to. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share. My channel's not monetized, so I'm doing this for you guys and because I enjoy doing it. But I'd like more people to see my content, so doing any of those things can help the algorithm show it to more people. Anyways, thanks for watching.